If you could start by just telling me what happened when you first were diagnosed with cancer.
Well, that was about 10 years ago, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was it was in situ. It was in the lymph glands, and that was dealt with. I had a wide range excision and the lymph nodes removed under my arm. I had a course of radiotherapy, but no chemotherapy was needed there. That all went very well, very straightforward. I was off work for about 3 months and went back to work, and everything seemed to go back to normal again. I did cut down my hours because I was teaching, and I cut down my hours slightly. But then things seemed to just slot back into place again, and I went for regular checkups, which eventually got to every 6 months. And then I was got to the 5-year check, which was when they were sort of saying goodbye to you now. That we've had our 5 years, and hopefully now we can't say you're cured, but we can say that you're as cured as we feel we can say. So that was that point. And at that stage, they then did an X-ray, which led on to then finding that there was a shadow on my lung, which to begin with they thought it was just some kind of scarring from where I'd had the radiotherapy. But then it went on for about a few months, and in the end I said I would like to know what this is.
Yeah.
So they went ahead to find out what it actually was. And then they found that was actually cancer. The whatever it was that was on my lung was actually cancerous. So they decided that they would remove the upper lobe of my lung. So that was all done. And as far as I was concerned, they were saying they'd got everything, it was all clear.
Yeah.
So again I had another few months off work, and then went back to work, but the pain in my chest got worse and worse. And eventually I came to my GP, and who insisted that there was some scans and things done to find out what it was, and it found that it had actually spread into the fluids surrounding the lung.
Right.
So that was where everything really went very bad.
Right.
Somebody.
Yeah. And you talked about when you were depressed, and I remember around that time that you talked to me about the fact that a young gentleman just making his presence felt there, that you had that the uncertainty, that was at a time when it wasn't quite sure what was going on, and they weren't quite sure what the best treatment would be, and that the uncertainty of not knowing was ultimately actually worse than being told that it wasn't very good.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Well, altogether I've had 3 lots of chemotherapy, and I think going from one to the next, there's always this thought that at first I thought the first one would work, and just assumed it would work, and then it didn't work, and so another one was tried. And I think when you keep going from one to another, then the uncertainty starts to build up, and I think then that makes it quite difficult, because you then haven't got this thought, well, I'm having treatment, so it's going to work now. It's all having some treatment, it might work, it might not, and there's this that's with the uncertainty now, that I don't really have the confidence in the treatments that I did have.
Yes.
With I've had radiotherapy as well, which that has worked, has relieved some of the pain. So that's a good, positive thing. But with the chemotherapy, that they haven't worked, and we're now at a point where there isn't anything more that they can actually try. So that is a bit of a real sort of stumbling block now.
Yes.
Because now it's really down to the luck of the gods, really.
Yeah. And that could be, I think often doctors feel that giving bad news is the worst thing they can do. But in my experience as a GP, what people often find more difficult is the uncertainty of is it, isn't it cancer, is it, isn't it treatment. going to work. And then even when you say to people, well, I'm sorry, I don't think that this has worked, or I don't think that there is, in a sense that's almost a bit of a relief, because you know what you're facing.
Yes.
Is that something you would identify with?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, I think it's better the devil you know. I think sometimes, and I think it's quite hard to come to terms with a lot of things. But I think actually the uncertainty is probably harder than the knowing. You know, I'd rather be told one way or the other, it is or it isn't, than be sitting there thinking, well, is it or isn't it? It definitely is more difficult to be wondering.
Yeah.
And the sooner you know, the better.
So you'd rather be told
I'd rather
as
be
soon
told
as somebody
as soon as
knew,
possible,
rather
yes.
than stringing you out. I don't mean that people would deliberately
No,
do that, but
when you're waiting for results to come back, that's horrible. That's waiting for test results to come back and waiting to see if things have worked or not.
yeah.
That's definitely worse.
What do you do with yourself when you're waiting for test results to come back?
Try and sort of keep yourself as normal as possible. I think try and carry on with life as much as you can, and just try and keep your everyday things ticking over. And I had to give up work. I gave up work about maybe 3 years ago now, and that was very difficult because that was sort of a huge part of my life really, because I've been teaching for a long time, and that was although I'd gone to part-time work, I was still working 3 or 4 days, and I missed it.
Yes.
And miss the children, miss the friends at school, and miss the routine, I think, of having that everyday
Yes.
routine to carry out. And that was quite hard to give all that up, because you felt as though somebody's taking something away, and you're not good enough to do that anymore, and you can't do that anymore now. So I'm not saying on the scrap heap, but what can you do now? You haven't got a job, and you haven't got anything else to do, and it's quite sort of.
Is there any advice that you would give these doctors in the making about how to deal with people with cancer?
I think you've got to know where they are in accepting what's happened to them. I think you do need to know whether because I think some people just can't accept it at all. I think there are people that I know who either can't or won't accept what's happened to them, and are really quite angry and bitter. And I don't think I'm bitter about it. I am angry. I don't think you can not be angry. I think you need to know that everybody that has this. I don't think you can not be angry, especially when it is at this age, particularly.
Yes.
That you've got so much that you want to do with the rest of your life, and all of a sudden that's gone. And you might be able to do some of it. There's a lot of it that you're not going to be able to do, and I think you've got to be able to accept that. And I think you've got to be able to accept that. I think you've got to understand that person either is finding it's difficult,
Yes.
and if they are finding it difficult, I think you do need to help to some extent, as well as the surgical side of it, with the emotional side of it as well. I mean, I don't know if that needs to be a different person or something, or what, but I think there needs to be some sort of help and I think for the trainee doctors and the doctors that are coming across people for the first time with cancer, to know that it isn't just the illness, it's also what goes alongside the illness, because there's a lot that goes, with cancer. It's not, I mean, obviously some of them you do get better from, but some of them you don't. And I think you need to understand that a lot of people aren't going to get better, and that those people need a bit of help in getting through that. And I think, if you can be supportive of how they are, and if they've got things that they want to air, then give them a chance to actually to say it, and try not to brush it aside as, that'll once you got used to the idea, you won't get used to the idea, and I don't think anybody ever does. You do get used to the idea of having cancer as something you've got to deal with, but I don't think you actually get used to the idea of that you may not get better, that you may well die.
Anything else?
I think be yourself as much as you possibly can too. I think you can act, or don't try not to act. no, I don't think there's anything that I can think of that you should do.